Hello, and welcome to another episode of IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Mike Roderick, and with me today is Mr. Sean Oriano. How you doing, Sean?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. We got another exciting episode coming your way in our Kali Linux series. And in this episode in particular, we're going to be focusing in on wireless. So wireless networks, different technologies, and then, of course, some of the tools that we can use to do tests against these wireless networks. Wireless networks, Sean, very common thing to find in most networks. Also a very common source of vulnerabilities, I guess, is a good way to put it.
Yes, indeed. They absolutely are a very, very, very common source of problems, of the security kind. So, we've got, when we think about it, it's, we used to just have the wireless in the 802.11 segment. Now what do we have? We have Bluetooth, and then we have RFID, and then we even have other stuff out beyond that with NFC and stuff like that. So it's really, with wireless appearing in different forms in so many different places, there is a big potential for security problems. Security problems have definitely been realized in across the board. So it's something that Kali actually comes to bear and has a bunch of tools that it can use to help you assess and see where you actually stand as far as issues with wireless.
Yeah, it just opens up so many other avenues of attack, as you say. Because you're wireless, you're unbound, so it's inherently more difficult to secure because it is an unbound media. Your data is just floating out there, and anybody within range and an antenna could potentially capture that information. And it's also, the technology changes so fast. There's problems within the protocols themselves, like we remember 802 early on, 802.11 had WEP, which we know had issues, and we're seeing the same things in some of these other technologies, Bluetooth and RFID. I think as they're being pushed out so fast, security is kind of an afterthought, and it's like, we're going to get it out, we're going to get this cool technology made up and make it really convenient and easy to use, then figure out how to secure it after the fact, and sometimes that's not the best strategy. So it does leave a lot of vulnerabilities, and as you said, there's tons of tools to take advantage of those.
Yeah, there's a lot of tools on both sides. There's a lot of tools from the defensive side. There's tools on the offensive side, and it's things that we have to use to protect ourselves or see where we actually stand. And I definitely agree with the statement you said about with wireless being pushed out and being put in so many places, like really any technology.
Mm-hmm.
They just keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And then after the fact, they're like, oh, now let's secure it. It's like, yeah, let's close the barn door after the horses have eaten your children, or whatever. I don't know how that saying goes, but whatever, you'll work it. So,
I
caught you on that one, didn't I?
You did. I was like, wait,
what?
Wait. Do you use any of the NFCs? Do you have your smartphone with your credit card stored on there, where you can just walk up and touch your phone or the device and pay for things?
I don't use that. No way.
No, yeah.
I won't even touch that. So.
I mean, that just seems to me like a horrible thing until they get a little. And it's a great concept. It's a great idea. I'm sure it's very convenient, but from a security perspective, we've talked about it in several shows, right? Convenience and security typically are on opposite ends of the spectrum, and making something really easy to use usually reduces the security on that thing, and I think that's a great example. So,
opposite ends of the spectrum with wireless, get it?
So, wireless networks, just as a quick refresher for folks out there, I know most of you are, at this point, if you're watching this class, you've gone through NetPlus, you've done some of that basic stuff, so you have an understanding of what a wireless network is. But let's just do a quick recap, Sean, about what we mean by a wireless network.
Yeah, a wireless network is, it really, we take the really kind of pathetic answer and go, that's a network without wires. Next.
Check.
Yeah, done. Yeah. This is like the abridged version of the courses. That is what it is. But when you look at a wireless network, it doesn't use wires, but uses radio waves to carry out those, that information to wherever it needs to go. So that's the first concept we have there. And now the thing is that since it uses wireless to carry or RF to carry those signals out wirelessly, that's great. You can be wherever you need to be within reason and get that signal. The downside of it is that you can be wherever you need to be and still get that signal.
Right.
So it's a plus and a minus there. So why the user that's authorized and legit to use that can get it from the next room or on the other side of the parking lot. So can the attacker. The attacker can get it from those exact same places. And unlike wired networks where they physically have to gain access, and then that brings in all sorts of ways we can pick that up, wireless, you can't do that. Wireless, you just can't say, well, there's someone sitting in this area where they are tapping into the network.
And it's difficult, to do a lot of people don't do proper wireless surveys on their network, so they don't realize that their signal's reaching outside of their building, possibly into the next office or into that parking lot or something like that, where somebody could sit unmonitored and attempt to access that network. So it does, as you said, bring a whole other set of issues to bear. Also with wireless networks, again, quick recap for you, they can be set up in two different modes, right? You've got your peer-to-peer type or your ad hoc networks, where you've got wireless clients that are connecting to each other directly. So each wireless client talks to another wireless client directly. They basically form a mesh if there's more than a couple of devices there. Doesn't give you any access to the wired portion of the network, just to all the wireless clients. So that's one, that's the ad hoc, and then you've got the access point. I forget the name we use for that one. What is that mode?
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure mode, thank you. Where you've got an access point, and that access point is tied into the wired network. All the wireless clients connect to that access point, so it's a central connectivity device. And even if two wireless clients want to talk to each other, the traffic still flows back through that access point and out to the other client. So two different modes, something we might have to consider, when we're doing our wireless surveys or doing our pen test against our network, is how they have that set up. And another thing I was just popped into my head is, what if I find a ad hoc network that maybe shouldn't be allowed, right? You've got two people that have set one up. Not really. This is what happens is you get two, say, C-level people that want to share files real quick. They set up a little ad hoc network. They have no idea what they're doing, how to secure it, and that opens up holes in our security as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens, with every technology that can cause problems. And yeah, the peer-to-peer ones by someone. Yeah, I could definitely see someone just said C-level. And they're C-level because they're not smart enough to be an A to figure out that that's a bad idea.
I was just going to say, I don't mean anything bad. If you're a C-level, I don't mean anything derogatory by that at all. But you probably have other bigger things to worry about than how to configure wireless networks.
No,
So,
no you don't.
That's my disclaimer.
No,
there.
you don't. I mean that bad, and I can say that because I'm all about. I'm Captain America. I can say that. So, yeah, it's the nature of the beast. Is that you've got. Is that when they push new technology out, someone's is gonna abuse it. It's gonna find these little things like that to do. And I also think it's worthwhile when we're talking about this whole thing with wireless. Make sure that we do bring in the fact that we have different standards. They're different standards, and you can feel free to look these up on your own. But just do a quick recap. You have 802.11a, then you have 802.11b, G, N. And then we even have on the really just came out is AC, and we got DC coming out next year.
We're gonna get them together and start a band, yeah.
So, but yeah, you got those. But we have those as being the main standards right now. AC, you're probably not going to see a lot of right now because if you go look at the access points for it, the access points themselves are. They're kind of pricey. They're not all ridiculously pricey,
Right.
but they're more than you're paying for your access points for the other stuff. I've seen access points just regular, supposed to be consumer grade access points for AC running about $800-900. They're cool and they're cool looking. I mean, they always got these weird shapes and stuff like look like a bug. I'd probably hit it with a newspaper or something on the wall. But they have those, but they're going to come down in price like anything. So you're probably not going to see too many of those yet, but they are kind of making their way into the marketplace. And what separates those standards is mainly speed, as well as the frequency range it runs in. If you look at things like A and N, those ones both have the ability to run at 5 gigahertz, and that tends to be a less polluted, meaning there's less devices running in that spectrum. So you're probably going to get better performance and less issues as far as interference and all that nastiness. Downside, because of the way it's that signal's formatted and modulated, you get a situation where it doesn't go that far and easily gets thwarted by just basic construction of buildings or obstacles. It will stop. Now, if you have 2.4 will go a lot further than A will. However, there's a lot of things that run at 2.4 because it's an unlicensed band, and since it's an unlicensed band, you have all sorts of things running there. Everything from your wireless networks, of course, your cordless phones, your Bluetooth devices, to under the right conditions, a microwave can generate those types of signals, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're not even bringing in stuff like your various game controllers and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff that's crunched in and jammed into that 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, and so it's still more popular than 5 gigahertz because of the range and the ability to be compatible with so many different devices. So you're more likely going to see that than the 5 gigahertz. So you really should have a good handle and understanding when you're doing your attacks and using the tools for wireless. You should really have a good understanding of what the different standards mean to you, and that will allow you to use the tools better. Because if you don't know the standards, at least at some basic level or intermediate level, you're probably going to get less than stellar results with with these tools. I don't need you to become an RF engineer and go get all those fat books on it and go through it and study all it. You want to do that, fine, go ahead. But you don't need that. You need to understand what the standards are. You need to understand security protocols and maybe some of the stuff, the environment that can impact and affect signals. Those are the ones we're going for. Once you've got those, tools become much easier. But anything else above that, it's just extra stuff that's nice to have, but it's not going to really add a ton of extra value to your skill set. And I know some may argue with that, but that's the kind of the way I look at it.
All right, so as a pen tester, playing with Kali here, we've got a good understanding of what our wireless networks are, the different standards, and then you also mentioned something, there's different types of wireless networks, like 802.111 or Wi-Fi, as we like to call it, is not the only wireless standard we can use or wireless protocol we can use to network with, or that we have to worry about checking to see if there's any vulnerabilities, right?
Yes, there are a lot of, relatively speaking, there are a lot of wireless standards out there. More than just the 802.11 that people are familiar with. When you say wireless, most people go directly to 802.11 nowadays. They don't take into account that Bluetooth is a wireless standard. They know it in their head, but they're not going to just spit that out and say, oh, well, wireless. They're going to say, oh, it's a Wi-Fi network, and I've got one at home. It's like, well, Bluetooth is wireless. I mean, do you see those things plugged together? It's not just using dreams and goodwill to push the data over. It's actually using RF, so it does classify as a wireless network or wireless technology, and it actually is a networking technology. When you get down to it. It's short range, of course. The stuff that we're familiar with, at least, is short range. Goes out to about 30 feet.
Yeah, most of it was Class 2 radios, I think, which is what you find in most of those Bluetooth devices, 30 feet. But that's still pretty good range, and we've got people that with phones. Everybody's got their smartphone, and most people have Bluetooth enabled, and some even do like auto pairing and stuff like this, and that's not a good scenario.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to think about with Bluetooth, and in a number of ways I'd look at Bluetooth as being more of a security issue even than 802.11 in a number of cases, because like you said, it's turned on a lot of the times, and they have these pairing set up. People just leave that stuff on all the time because they want it so when they go into the car, it hooks up immediately. They want to be when they get out of the car, it clicks onto their to their headset or pairs with whatever. They want to have that, so it's always on. Downside of that is we have a lot of tools that can pick up that information from Bluetooth and say, hey, I know that you're there, and be able to read device IDs and stuff like that off of it, and even brute force it and read services and everything else that are on that. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, as they say. There's more stuff that we can do once we've gotten to that point. So yeah, Bluetooth is a definite issue, and it was built for convenience. It wasn't built for security. Right. They stuck security on afterwards, but it's still not really implemented as well as it could be, and a system's only as good as the people that are configuring it and using it. And so, most of the people that use cell phones and smartphones that have these things on it, they're just thinking about the convenience aspect of it. There's no security whatsoever, as far as they're concerned. So that's just one of the other wireless technologies. But even then, that's not that's not covering it all. There are other ones that are out there that you could run into or will run into, just a matter of time. One that you can run into is Zigbee. You don't run into that one too much, but that one's for medical and industrial. It's very specific to those environments.
And home automation, I have some at my house.
The what?
Yeah, home automation too.
Okay.
Yep,
So,
I got
okay.
some
Yeah.
nice
Oh, that's right.
Wall switches and things like that. So yeah.
I'm gonna hack your stuff, man.
I know. Yeah. It's convenient, but anybody can now turn on my lights from wherever you want.
You'll make it look like the house is haunted and just we'll start flicking lights around.
But yeah, so you got Bluetooth, you got things like Zigbee and Insteon. There's a bunch of those that you might run into. Now, when it comes to like RFID, is that something we have to worry about and test? I know it's such a short range typically. I see it used a lot in door sensors. Like we use key fobs here to get through all of our access ways. Is that something we have to worry about testing? Is there anything there?
I wouldn't take it off. I wouldn't take it off the menu. If it's in that environment, it's something that should be checked, because traditionally it has had its little areas of concern and grief just kind of surrounding it. So I would check it, or kind of think about checking it if it's there. All we have to do is look through news stories of the last maybe 5 years and see cases where they've been worried about people reading RFID stuff out of passports and credit cards and everything else. So it's something to really kind of think about, and they want to put more RFID chips on stuff. That's something that's picking up more and more and more and more. And the thought isn't over security. Again, it's over it's convenience. I mean, they've been talking for a long time about having everything in a grocery store, believe it or not, have an RFID tag on it. So you just throw the stuff in your cart, and just when you walk out, there's like an arch that just sees all the stuff in your cart and sees you and just bills it to you automatically when you go out.
Yeah, I'm all about it. Woohoo! But again, you think about the convenience versus security, right? That means that system might be able to pick up all the food in your cart. It also has to figure out who you are, has to figure out how to bill you. That means they've got information on file and stuff like that. So yeah. So Sean, when it comes to some common mistakes we see in wireless networks, let's talk about some of the misconfigurations or things we should be looking for if we're tasked with doing a pen test on a network. We find out that they have wireless. What are some of the common things we see wrong in wireless networks?
Well, the things that we see. I mean, try to say common things.
Right.
Yeah, there's a bunch. Misconfiguration is still a very big one. I don't know if I put it right at the top, but it's definitely up there or getting close to it. People getting the technology and get that ooh whiz factor that they want to have it installed, and they just plug it in, the lights come on, and they can't wait to get their notebook or tablet or whatever out and connect to it. They're like, oh look, it works. They're all happy about it, and they don't actually read the rest of the instructions and say, hey, you got to secure that. It works, So you do still see a fair amount of that. I've seen not just the misconfiguration. I have seen or leaving defaults in place. I've seen it where people put settings in there that are less than optimal, that do lend themselves to being busted a lot easier. Other ones I've seen people pushing wireless way beyond its limits, and when you do that, you do risk risk pushing it so far that you're applying it in a way that it wasn't intended for, and then opening up security holes with it. So there could be a number of them out there. I'd even say using some of the older technologies that they haven't upgraded for whatever reason. One of the biggest things you have with technology is people still have the mindset of, you buy something, you pay all this money on it, you should keep using it till it just fries and you throw it away and buy a new one. Well, I understand the way that way of thinking. It's the same. But it's not it's not ideal for this field. I mean, there's still tons of people that, and it's kind of a scary thing. Just giving an example of that type of thinking, at least. It's been said that they believe that there's still millions and millions and millions of computers sitting in people's attics and garages and stuff like that from the early 80s and throughout the 80s, because these people spent thousands of dollars on these things, and they're not going to chuck it. They stuck it in there figuring, well, maybe there's something I can do with it. They're never going to do anything with it. It's going to be a museum piece, or it's eventually, when that person croaks or finally decides that, and I'm being really sensitive saying croaks. Yeah, I learned that as being a counselor years ago.
I can tell.
But that stuff's gonna end up in a landfill, and a lot of those computers from that day and age had toxic, very toxic stuff in it. So they've already had them up here in landfills, and it's just that sense of people don't want to get rid of something until they pay that amount of money for. It's the same thing with wireless, and other technologies. They're going to keep it around till they don't have a reason to keep it around anymore. And in this case, it means you have security problems that could be creeping in. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that they just don't want to replace it because it still works. It could be that it's still good technology if you kept things like the firmware up to date. But they don't do that. They're just, it works, and I'm going to leave it that way. And until someone forces me to get new firmware or something for it, then I'm just not going to do it.
So devices that aren't patched, like access points and things like that, aren't running the latest OS for those devices or firmware, misconfigured, using their older protocols or the wrong protocols, not upgrading equipment, as you said, and still running some of those older protocols, or not understanding the security options that are available when they configure the wireless access point, picking the different authentication and encryption methods. You got a choice between WEP and WPA, WPA2, and maybe they pick WEP because they don't know any better. So misconfiguration there. Weak passwords is another big one I think we see a lot of times on access points, especially because they don't change as often as they should. That's one of the things I've always seen is, as a user, we can use policies within our network to force users to change their password every 30 days or every 45 days or something. When's the last time anybody's changed the password on your wireless network, right? It's the same password it's been for the last 3 years. So weak passwords, and then not changing those passwords, picking the wrong authentication and security options, all of that starts compiling and making for a very vulnerable situation on these wireless networks. So.
Yeah, and again, this is just the tip of the whole thing. You think of other stuff. People can set up access points a lot easier than they could even a few years ago. Probably a lot of you watching this, can whip out your smartphone and set it up as a hotspot. That's something that you couldn't do a few years ago. What are you going to do in your company if you have someone that's got a wireless card in their notebook or whatever device, and they've also hardwired it onto the network? Well, they could very well connect to both of them, and all of a sudden they've got a direct line from the outside world, bypassing everything, right into your network. And that's just obviously not a good thing. But people do that. They do it all the time. So it's one of those situations where you really got to do your due diligence and really check these things, because people will do little nonsense things like that to kind of get their way, rather than deal with than follow security protocols that you've established.
All right, well, Sean, I tell you what, that's a lot of good information about wireless networks, just kind of a basic understanding of wireless networks, so we can talk a little bit more intelligently when we get into our tools part. But looking at our clock, it's about time for us to take a break. So why don't we wrap this one up, and when we come back with another episode, maybe we can take a look at some of the stuff that Callie's going to bring to bear that will allow us to do our penetration tests against these wireless networks. Sound like a plan?
Sounds good. After the break, we're going back to Cali.
We're going back to Cali. I like it. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed watching this episode. Signing off for IT Pro TV, I'm Mike Roderick.
And I'm Sean Ariano.
And we'll see you next time.